On December 27, 1892, Livingstone and Biddle College, now known as Johnson C. Smith University, played in Salisbury, North Carolina, with Biddle winning 5-0. Over time, HBCU football has evolved. HBCU football's popularity continues to rise. Millions attend games each year and millions more watch on television. The HBCU bands provide some of the top entertainment in the country. Over that time, some of the best players to ever play in the National Football League played at HBCUs. Every Monday through Friday on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, national radio and television host Donl Ware takes a look at what's happening in HBCU football and talks with coaches, players, administrators, and media about the season. Make sure you join the conversation on social media. Now, here's your host, Donl Ware.
This is the HBCU Football Daily Podcast for today, Tuesday, September 12th. I'm Donl Ware. It's Takeaway Tuesday on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. Before we talk about this, I get to some of my takeaways. Actually, a couple of things. I want to, first of all, talk about the HBCU coaches and media polls, which were released, as a matter of fact, on yesterday. In the coaches poll, it was unanimous. All 20 coaches that voted North Carolina Central number 1, followed by Florida A&M at number 2, Jackson State at number 3, Howard at number 4, and Prairie View A&M at number 5. 6 through 10 look like this: Morgan State, Alabama A&M, Alabama State, Tennessee State, and North Carolina A&T. In the media poll, you had North Carolina Central at number 1, receiving 17 of the 21 first place votes, followed by Florida A&M at number 2. The Rattlers received 1 first place vote. Benedict at number 3, Jackson State at number 4, Virginia Union at number 5. And by the way, Benedict received a first place vote. 6 through 10 look like this: Morgan State, who received a first place vote, Howard, Prairie View A&M, Tuskegee, and Virginia State. So that's a look. And of course, you can log on to BOXTOROW.com to look at the HBCU coaches and media polls. Our BOXTOROW National Players of the Week: Norfolk State linebacker or defensive back Joseph White had a really good game. 5 tackles, 3 of those solo. He had 3 pass breakups. He had an interception in the ball game. Now, he had on Hampton had pulled to within 31 to 23. So it pulled and made it a 1 possession or 1 score game, or a touchdown and a 2-point conversion game. And on the last 2 possessions, the next to last possession, Joseph White broke up a pass. On the last possession, he intercepted a pass to preserve the victory for the Spartans. And the Spartans are going to be one of my takeaways, which I will get to momentarily. Our second HBCU National Player of the Week, Donovan Riddick, the quarterback for West Virginia State. Been talking about him a lot. 299 yards of total offense, 281 yards through the air, 25 of 34 passes completed. That's 76%, 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. In the Yellow Jackets' 37-35 victory over UNC Pembroke. It's a Mountain East game, and this young man is absolutely fantastic. Over 2,000 yards in each of his last 2 seasons, and so he's just been incredible. He's got something like 36 touchdowns to 12 interceptions over that time frame. He's also rushed for another, I think it is 11 touchdowns. He's rushed for like over 700 yards, something like that. This young man is absolutely fantastic. So one of my takeaways from week 2 in HBCU football, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 5 programs that are 2-0 on the season. And you know, I think we kind of saw this last year, where a lot of the programs were really sort of gaining some steam and being undefeated 2-3 weeks in to the season. We saw that with Langston on last year. Your programs are North Carolina Central, who's number 1 in the media poll, Benedict, who's number 3 in the poll, Virginia Union, who's number 5 in the poll, Tuskegee, who's number 9 in the poll, and Virginia State, who's number 10 in the poll. And you talk about some big wins. Virginia State had a big win over Tusculum. That's a team out of the SAC, or the South Atlantic Conference, which is a very, very tough conference. You talk about Tuskegee. I talked about this a little bit when Reginald Ruffin left Miles last year to come to Tuskegee. Miles won like one football game, I think, last year, and even Miles is playing some pretty good football. Miles with a big win over Alabama State, which was a bit of a surprise on Saturday, but Tuskegee maintaining with that 2-0 record. And Virginia Union, I mentioned, big win for the Rattlers. Benedict has shut out both Shaw and Benedict. Oh man, I can't even remember off the top of my head who Benedict played yesterday. But again, a 34-0 victory by Benedict on yesterday. I mean, it's something like a combined 80 in excess of 80 points, 80-0. Benedict has outscored its opponents so far this season. And then North Carolina Central, a big win over rival North Carolina A&T. And again, as I mentioned yesterday, I'm really excited. I think it's absolutely a fantastic opportunity. Listen, if you're going to play a money game, not only get the money, but play a big-time opponent. And Trey Oliver was on the MEAC call on yesterday, talked about how this game came about, I believe through the Ernie Barnes Foundation. So this is a big payday for North Carolina Central, a big game. But on the field, I'm interested to see, because he mentioned they've got like 28 players, 28 of the NFL teams have come through North Carolina Central to inquire about various players. I know they're inquiring about Davius Richard. I know they're inquiring about Khalil Baker. This is an opportunity for both of those young men, and that's another one of my takeaways. Big win against A&T for the Eagles, but now you go up to the FBS, and it's an opportunity for Davius Richard to shine in front of a big audience and on a national stage. It's an opportunity for Khalil Baker to shine. Some of these other guys, Latrell Collier, the running back, some of these guys to really shine. I really like Jamari Taylor as the running back as well. You know, guys like Quentin McCall and Devin Smith as wide receivers to really shine on a big stage. And so I think that's, obviously that's really good for North Carolina Central, and looking forward to seeing that for the Eagles and what the Eagles are able to do with that. On the coaches' call, another one of the takeaways, the MEAC coaches are really, the MEAC is really sticking together. You could talk about the 6 football playing institutions, the 8 institutions overall, but really the MEAC wants other MEAC opponents to do well against non-conference opponents, and the teams have an opportunity to do that against 6 other teams. I like that. Like, it's not ideal maybe to have 6 teams, although at the end of the day, you're going to the Celebration Bowl anyway if you win the conference. So yeah, it may not get an automatic qualifier, but you still have it at large, as Buddy Pugh said on the call, still an opportunity to get an at-large berth. And I think that if I look at, North Carolina Central and what, it's doing, Howard, Howard obliterated this week Morehouse, which it was supposed to do, but a tough loss against Eastern Michigan, where it's playing up against a MAC opponent. Okay. Quentin Williams, it played pretty well in that football game. You got some players that can really play. So again, you never know. but it's an opportunity to play against some non-conference opponents. Maybe if you get some wins, you get to, let's say, 9 wins. Maybe you look, because once conference play comes around, it's going to be tough in conference play. So even with that, maybe an opportunity it'd be a small opportunity, right? But the point is, the conference coaches are really sticking it together, and I'm going to tell you even more about that in one of my other takeaways. Another takeaway is a big win by Norfolk State. It was a bounce back win because I feel like Norfolk State, to some degree, and it's really no shame. Look, I look at Virginia State, and Virginia State has got a good program. Dr. Henry Frazier doing a great job there. They're 2-0, as I mentioned, beat a good Tusculum team. But if you're Norfolk, you're probably a little bit embarrassed having lost that football game to Virginia State, your old CIAA rival. So to bounce back and win a game against a Hampton team who the week previous beat Grambling in New Jersey, I think is a bounce back win. One of the reporters on the conference call asked Coach Odoms whether this could be potentially the win over over Hampton. Norfolk State's win over Hampton could be a defining win during the season. He indicated it's probably a little bit too early to tell that, but a loss could define a season, a win could define a season. I would argue, especially that we'll see where Norfolk State is once MEAC play comes around, and if Norfolk does well in the MEAC, which I think the loss early on, if I had to say, I think the loss against Virginia State by the Spartans was a wake-up call. Okay, that's what I think. And you look at the quarterback, Otto Kunze, came back, was named MEAC Player of the Week, 3 touchdowns in the victory over Hampton. That loss, I think, was an eye-opener. And I think Norfolk State, while it may not have looked like Norfolk State was going to be in contention for the MEAC championship, I think, listen, Dawson Odoms is a heck of a football coach. He and his staff are going to make adjustments. And so while it may have looked bleak last week, looks better against a solid Hampton football team. So that's a big win, I think, by Norfolk State. One of my other takeaways is Morgan State. I talked about Morgan State on last week. I'm an alum, but it's really one of my takeaways because, listen, HBCU football is still buzzing about Morgan State. I mentioned the camaraderie of the MEAC coaches. Well, basically all of the MEAC coaches recognized Morgan State. Now, Morgan State did lose to Akron, but they were playing up. They lost 24-21. Morgan State had the lead inside of a minute remaining, trying to run the clock out, and fumbled the football. Akron picks it up, goes back the other way. Again, Morgan was up 21-17 at that time. So that's a heartbreaking loss. But people are recognizing that Morgan State is real, that defense is real, and it's rare that when you come off a loss, you move up in the polls. Okay, that's the respect that is being shown to Morgan State. In the coaches poll last week, Morgan State was 8. It lost, and there weren't a whole lot of losses above Morgan State. Like all the teams, you had Alabama State who lost. You had Florida A&M who lost, but again, they played up. They remained at number 2. Jackson State won, Howard won. These teams that are above Morgan State, Central won. A lot of those teams won games. Morgan lost and still moved up 2 places in the coaches poll. Same thing in the media poll. Moved up 2 places in the media poll coming off of a loss. So I think Damon Wilson and his staff are doing a tremendous job. I think once they get the offense together like they want it to be for the Bears, right? I think, the Bears didn't run the ball as well as they did last week in the win against Richmond, but they passed it a little bit better. But the defense is the constant, and the defense is legit. It is a top defense. And I think if they get the quarterback situation together, the offense going, watch out for Morgan State. So that's another one of my takeaways. And as a matter of fact, my last takeaway for week 2 of HBCU football. That's going to wrap it up for today's HBCU football daily podcast. Tomorrow we transition to week 3 of the HBCU football season. As always, please tell a friend about the HBCU football daily podcast, where you can watch us on the BOXTOROW YouTube channel, and you can download or listen to the podcast at BOXTOROW.com as well as iHeartMedia.com. Talk with you tomorrow.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. You can also listen to the podcast at BOXTOROW.com, iHeartMedia, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to get your HBCU football fix on BOXTOROW with Donl Ware each weekend on the radio station near you, and on SiriusXM on HBCU, Channel 142, and on ESPNU Radio on SiriusXM, Channel 84. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at BOXTOROW for the latest in HBCU football, and don't forget to tell a friend.